Today, we're diving into a pretty radical idea from a text called The Demon in You. The whole thing suggests that our most powerful internal energy, well, it might not be entirely our own. Let's get right into it.
Right out of the gate, the source material hits us with a startling question. Is the very energy that defines your vitality, your life force, actually a food source for something else? It's a wild idea for sure, so let's see how the text breaks it down.
So, before we can even get into who or what might be feeding on this energy, we really need to understand what this energy is. The source material calls it a universal life force.
Now, when the source brings up sexual energy, it's not just talking about the physical act. You gotta think bigger. It's framing it as the foundational power for our entire being. You know, the life force that juices up our body's energy centers, the whole chakra system.
And here's where the concept really starts to stretch our minds. The text says that this isn't just a human thing or even a biological need. This energy is presented as a universal requirement for survival for all forms of existence, including those that don't even have a physical body.
Okay, so if this energy is a universal necessity, it kind of makes sense that some beings might need to get it from others, right? And this leads us to the idea of an unseen predator.
So who are these consumers? The text is pretty direct. It identifies them as beings it calls demons or Satan. It says they exist in the astral realm, a non-physical plane of existence. And because they don't have physical bodies, they supposedly rely on this life force energy from us to sustain themselves and, to grow stronger.
This quote from the source really gives us a powerful way to think about it. It frames this whole dynamic not as some grand battle of good versus evil, but more like a natural, instinctual relationship, like a predator and its prey out in the wild.
And this really gets to the heart of the argument. The source is very clear here. These beings aren't presented as evil. Their actions are described as just their nature, a drive for survival. The goal, then, is to keep our energy stuck in the lower chakras, which stops our spiritual growth and, more importantly, makes sure their food source is always available.
So, the big question is, how does this all actually happen? How does this energy get consumed? The text explains it with a concept it calls the trap of fear and lust. It's laid out as a three-step process. First, the human mind is influenced to stay in a low vibrational state. Second, this triggers what the text calls animal lust, which pulls all that powerful sexual energy down and concentrates it in the basic chakra. And finally, when this potent energy just sits there, stagnating at a low frequency, it becomes their food.
And how is the mind kept in this low vibrational state? According to this text, it's done by manipulating our most primal emotions. Lustful thoughts are a huge tool because they already match their vibration. But fear is just as powerful. Fear of survival, fear of being alone, fear of death, all of these things keep our energy low and, accessible.
Okay, so that's the problem, and it sounds pretty heavy, right? But the source doesn't just leave us hanging. Now we get to the solution, how to reclaim and protect your own energy.
Now, here's a really interesting and kind of counterintuitive point. You'd think that having more energy makes you safer, but the text argues the exact opposite. The more potent your life force is, the bigger of a target you become. This means incredible self-discipline and awareness are absolutely key.
And that leads us to this crucial piece of advice. The path to reclaiming your energy means you have to look beyond the immediate, feel-good stuff that tickles your five senses. It's a call to develop a much deeper perspective, to really question what's nourishing you on a soul level versus what's just a temporary fix.
The source actually offers a specific practice for this transformation. It's called sexual alchemy. This is defined as the conscious act of taking that raw, powerful energy from the lower chakras and deliberately raising it up, transmuting it from the frequency of lust to the much higher frequency of compassion.
This brings us to the ultimate stakes of this whole concept. The text frames this entire struggle as a choice that determines the very reality we create for ourselves and, for the world around us. And this slide just lays out the stakes with perfect clarity. You've got two paths. On one, your energy stays stuck in the lower chakras, vibrating with fear and lust. Your consciousness is trapped, you remain a food source, and you end up creating hell on earth. But on the other path, you transmute that energy into compassion. Your consciousness awakens, you're liberated, and you actually help build heaven on earth.
So, what's the key takeaway from all of this?
It all boils down to self-mastery. According to this text, gaining conscious control over your fear and your lust is the thing that breaks the cycle. It frees you from what it calls an illusion, a system specifically designed to siphon away your spiritual energy.
And that leads us with this final, powerful question. The source puts all the power and all the responsibility right back in our hands. If our internal energy state is the literal blueprint for our external reality, then the choice of what we build, heaven or hell, is ultimately ours. So what will you choose to create?